Welcome to our webinar, How Open Software-Defined Automation Delivers Value Across Industries, Part 3, Use Cases. Today's webinar is sponsored by Schneider Electric and Automation.com, a subsidiary of the International Society of Automation. I am Renee Bassett, Chief Editor of Automation.com, and I will be your host. Industrial companies and infrastructure facilities are increasingly interested in modernizing their automation and control systems to reduce costs, more easily monitor and maintain distributed assets, and better secure their systems. Compared to traditional process automation systems, new system designs are becoming more modular, flexible, and scalable by decoupling the control logic from the physical devices it runs on. Open software-defined automation solutions, such as Schneider Electric's EcoStruxure Automation Expert, make it easier for industrial users to transition to a more agile, digital way of operating. Today is the third installment of our four-part series on open software-defined automation. And today you get to hear from and ask questions of our two very distinguished guests, Andre Babineau from Schneider Electric and Daniel Roberts from the city of Conroe, Texas in the USA. Today we'll cover what open software-defined automation is and how it differs from traditional control systems. We'll also cover how this new paradigm addresses the challenges and concerns faced by industrial infrastructure facilities worldwide, what it took to modernize the automation infrastructure for the city of Conroe water plants, and the benefits the city realized after phases 1 and 2 of its system upgrade. In addition, what's next for phase 3? We'll also cover resources and other support that you and others can expect from Schneider Electric and EcoStruxure Automation Expert. We'd like this to be an interactive session, so following the discussion, there will be a question and answer period. Please take a moment to find the questions icon in this GoToWebinar interface so you could submit your questions. They will only be seen by me and our speakers, and I will ask our speakers to respond to as many as possible while keeping the overall presentation time to 1 hour. Questions not answered will be responded to via email. This presentation, including the Q&A, is being recorded. There is also a link to additional resources located under the handouts icon on your screen. You can download that at any time. All right. Welcome, gentlemen. Please introduce yourselves.
So I'll start, Daniel. So my name is Andre Babineau. I'm from Schneider Electric, working in the Industrial Automation Division, and I'm the country director for Canada for Open Software-Defined Automation.
And my name is Daniel Roberts. I'm the city of Conroe, Texas, water and sewer superintendent. I've been with the city of Conroe just over 20 years now.
In part 1 of our series, we discussed the evolution of automation and control systems and the two separate but related aspects of this new paradigm, open systems and software-related automation. Andre, can you start by defining for us what each of these is and how the combination differs from what we find in traditional systems?
Absolutely. And one of the key elements in the open software-defined automation, or two key elements, I would say. The first one is really decoupling the logic from the physical hardware. So really, we're decoupling the logic that we need to run in our devices from the actual hardware. So there's no tie in between the two. It's like basically separating your brain from your body kind of approach. And really that approach to software-defined is a key enabler for openness and to be able to go further. And talking about openness, that's the other key element that open software-defined leverage is the standard-driven ecosystem. So basically all the solution is really driven based on standard that everybody can use, making this interoperability and portability possible that removes this tie-in or this lock-in into a specific vendor. And if we look at open software-defined, obviously we bring this hardware independence. We do bring this digital continuity across the life cycle of the system because we leverage software or IT solution to bring data from the inception, from design to engineering to operation, and make it that cyclical so you never lose data and you have straight visibility where you can leverage your IT system through AI or other types of application. And the last one that's unique to the solution that Schneider offers is really this application-centric design, where basically now you look at your plan holistically and you design fully your control strategy in one space that is not tied to any hardware limitation or constraint, because as remember, we're decoupling this hardware and software. So now you have a big canvas to really design what you need to go do. And that design remain yours, a little bit like a playlist. Even though you change your phone, your playlist is still available no matter where you go. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with open software-defined automation.
Thank you very much. In the second webinar in our series, we talked in depth with Andre and Sarat Molakasima from universalautomation.org. Andre, can you summarize for the audience what universalautomation.org does and how Schneider Electric works with them?
Absolutely. That's part of the ecosystem to be open. And really, universalautomation.org is a nonprofit organization dedicated to develop a shared runtime environment with the vision of open automation that they can offer to all the members of this nonprofit organization. And those members can come from manufacturers and user to academics. And all of them are working together to provide this shared runtime to all the community in the market to really extend that portability and that openness. So URL plays a critical role in that openness, in the contrast to traditional approach where a single manufacturer developed very single runtime engine, and then only it will work with that vendor solution. So really we're trying to expand, and that's how Schneider participate and a member of the UAO ecosystem, and we want to continue to expand this because we really believe in it. And EcoStruxure Automation Expert is an open software-defined environment that leverage that runtime that is provided by UAO. So we can offer also compatible hardware to that solution, but we use that universal runtime, giving back the power of choice to the customer to select the hardware and the architecture they would require. Another thing that we do provide from an EE perspective really is in cyber secured by design, which is unique in the market because it's a brand new offer. It was designed from the ground up to make sure that all those transactions are fully cyber secure versus trying to set a perimeter around the control and automation system to make it cyber secure. So that cyber secured by design is recognized by TUV, and we're certified, and we're the only system to be certified to the standard IEC 62443 security level 2. So that's a unique also proposition that he can provide.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that context, because what's happening now with open systems is really important, and it definitely applies across industries. Industrial facilities, no matter what they process or produce, face similar challenges. And so what we want to do most today is talk about how and why open software-defined automation is being applied and how it can deliver value to an organization. And that's why we've invited Daniel. Daniel, can you tell us what were the challenges that the city of Conroe was facing regarding its water infrastructure operations?
Sure. The city of Conroe has had automation equipment at our water plants for several years now, but it was really limited to a single provider. So the city of Conroe staff, in essence, was at the mercy of that provider. We were basically locked out of our own system. And if that initial provider or installer wasn't available when we had an issue, then we were just waiting on them to arrive to address the problem. And as that went on for multiple years, we ended up with more and more problems just stacking up on top of each other, and more and more failed systems inside of our water plants.
That sounds like quite a problem. What were the criteria or driving factors for the new system that you were looking for? And also any constraints in terms of timeline or how urgently this needed to be changed?
Yeah, so as Andre mentioned, and the reason we chose this equipment is because it was a more open software-defined automation. Our staff has now been trained with this instrumentation. We can get in there and do some programming on our own. That's a huge reason why we chose this equipment is so that we weren't just nailed down, as I mentioned before, to a single provider or the initial installer. If we can't figure it out on our own, Schneider has a great team that's helped us obviously along the way and has continued to provide support. But even if we decided in the future to go with another programmer or installer, which we don't plan to, but we have that option. We can't.
All right, that's quite interesting to hear you, Danielle. If I may, Renee, to ask a question to Danielle. We discussed a little bit the E values earlier, at least I presented them. And as you executed the project, obviously you were presented to a lot of different things from Schneider, trying to provide you the best solution. But which one really become evident in the execution of this project? And did you find any additional benefit also that you not necessarily planned for initially?
So the greatest benefit, I guess, is being able to have real-time remote access to all of our facilities. In the past, with the failing systems and the problems piling up due to not being able to have them fixed and addressed in a timely manner, we were really reliant on either having to go to the facility to address an issue, or unfortunately, we were relying on our customers to notify us when there was a problem.
Got it. In the real implementation, did you face any issues with our solution? And maybe there's things you want to help us improve the solution. And I would really like to know and help our viewers, how much does it take and how complicated was it to get the system up and running, and who was involved and how long did it take to implement this whole solution that you just did?
Sure. So in the beginning, when we first started looking for a new automation software system, we involved not just the field and operations staff, which is where I work in. We involved our city engineers and outside electrical engineers that work with the city closely. We wanted their input and to make sure that they were comfortable with whatever equipment we decided to use. And we reached out to Schneider because we've had a long-standing relationship with Schneider Electric at the city of Conroe. We have a lot of their MCCs and panels in all of our facilities, not only at the water plants, but at our fire, city hall, just all of the city facilities have Schneider equipment inside them already. So we reached out to our local Schneider provider and just asked them, what do y'all have? What can y'all show us? And that's how we were introduced to EAE. And as I mentioned, our electrical engineers were involved in this decision-making process. City engineers were involved. And once they got a look at it and they were introduced to the open software automation definition, that they were on board. They thought it was a great idea. Everybody's been happy with it along the way. And as far as implementation, in the beginning, we did have to work with Schneider's team to go out and identify all of the existing equipment and the existing infrastructure that was inside the water plants. And that basically involved opening up the cabinets that were existing and are still existing at the water plants, and getting the serial numbers and model numbers of the cabinets to make sure the proposed equipment would integrate with the existing. So we didn't have to replace everything inside the plant, which saved a lot of money and time. We basically pulled out the brain, if you will, of the legacy automation equipment, and we inserted the new EAE brain. All of the same panels are still there. All of the same wiring is still there. It was a very small change for us. So that saved us a lot of time and money.
Daniel, about how long would you say it took from that first investigation of the site to when you had an operational system?
So we identified 4 of our critical water plants, the ones that are kind of on the outskirts of town or maybe at a higher topography than other plants, where they're kind of standalone water plants, where if they go down, we're really in a bind. There's no other way to get water there. So we identified those 4 critical plants and we moved forward with phase 1 of the project. So identifying the equipment in those first 4 and coming up with, building this project from the ground up, those first 4 plants took about 8 months from initial identification of existing equipment to having the equipment installed and running. Was about 8 months for the first 4 plants. And, there was budgeting time frame involved in that too. We had to take this to council and get approval and get funding for it. So not all of that 8 months was design and construction. But prior to that, after those first 4 were online and we were comfortable and happy with the way things were running, we moved forward with the remaining water plants. And that was another 15 water plants that we started in phase 2. And since we already had basically a copy paste script to go on, those phase 2, those next 15 plants only took 3 months.
That's impressive.
Yep. Now we have all 19 water plants up and running on the EAE system, and it's working very well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Well, so now that you're operational, what are the benefits that you've been seeing?
Obviously, the biggest benefit is being able to identify issues at the water plants. If our pressure is dropping or if a motor doesn't come on when it's supposed to, tank levels dropping, the system is alarming us and notifying of those problems before the tank level gets to a crucial point, or the water system pressure gets to a crucial point and begins impacting the customer. So we can remote log in, whether we're here at the office or after hours at home. Our operators can remote log in on their iPad and identify and hopefully address the problem again before the customer is impacted. Not to mention that having all this information, just remote access, makes our day-to-day a whole lot easier.
Can you be more specific for me about how it makes your day-to-day easier, day-to-day or week-to-week?
So before, with our failing systems, our failing legacy systems and lack of support, basically, we would have to go out to each individual water plant to collect the daily data. That's how many hours each motor ran, how much chemical we pumped, how many gallons of water we produced. We'd have to physically go out and mine that data. Now when we come in the morning, it's here on the computer. We just open it up and all of those run times and gallons of water, chemicals used, system pressure, it's right there ready for us, just waiting on us in the morning. And again, as far as ease of operations, when we do get a call, for instance, from a customer in any area of town, and maybe they're experiencing some low water system pressure, for instance, we can log in and make sure everything's okay at the plant while we're en route to address the customer's issue.
Well, that's helpful.
That gives us an idea if there is a larger issue, or if maybe it's just a smaller issue, a localized issue in the neighborhood or subdivision, wherever it's coming from. We can log in and make sure it's not a larger issue at the plant while we're en route.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. It sounds like you've got a much more bird's eye view, almost a much more comprehensive view of all of your operations.
Yeah, and like I said, the system will alarm us if there is an issue. I mean, we're looking at it in the mornings and in the afternoons to make sure all the levels are where they're supposed to be. But in the interim, when we're not actually logged in, if something happens, like the tank level is supposed to be at 40 feet and it's dropped down to 35 feet, the motor maybe didn't come on, it's going to send us an alarm and tell us, hey, something's going on, while we still have 35 feet of water in the tank.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that'll give us, several hours to troubleshoot the problem.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds like phase 1 and phase 2 have gone quite well. So what are your next steps for what happens next for your water plant?
So we're working on we're in the early design phases of phase 3 implementation, that is automating our documentation. Like I said, we have to document how many gallons of water we produce from each water plant every day. That's the most important thing. There's state required regulations. We have to report how many gallons of water we produce and how many pounds of chemical we use, that type of thing. So we have already had meetings with Schneider team and they are working on a program where when we walk in the morning, all of that information, that very important information, will be sitting on the printer waiting for us. So we can just pick up the sheet and we're still going to do an overview of the plants to make sure everything looks okay, but there will be no more clicking of a mouse to extract that data. It'll be sitting here waiting for us when we arrive at 7 a.m. That'll be huge. Currently, we're spending 4 to 6 hours a day, 1 to 2 operators, mining that data that we have to have for reporting purposes. For the system to automatically produce that documentation and have it waiting for us in the morning, to where for that 4 to 6 hours can be spent out in the field doing actual, maintenance of the water plants. That's going to be huge. We're really looking forward to that.
That seems really nice. Daniel, what advice would you have for users who are considering a similar upgrade, or who are where you were many months ago? How to get started, or what they should look out for?
Well, like in the situation we were in, again, being nailed down to that single provider and not having access of our own to be able to learn and do our own troubleshooting was it had us extremely handicapped and at the mercy of whoever the installer or provider was. So I would suggest to anyone looking to get out of that type of situation, there's so much technology available these days. Our goal is customer service. We want to make sure every customer, when they turn on the water faucet, has adequate water supply, and this equipment will help get you there.
Well, automation definitely changes the world, and automation of the people who run the operations can be that much more helpful. Andre, I'd like you to give us some more context. Daniel's given us a great example of what's happened at his water plant, but can you tell us if the City of Conroe's process of selection and implementation is typical of what Schneider sees with other customers?
Great question, Renee. Thank you. It was interesting to hear Danielle to talk about his documentation or data. And this is basically a foundation that we heard from different customers, that digital continuity is unique and provide extreme value, as Danielle was describing. Come in the morning and I don't need even to open the system. I have all the data, all that information ready to go, allowing me to plan my day. So we've heard that from other customers, but also other features we've heard from other customers is, and Danielle mentioned it a little bit, is yes, they did buy hardware from Schneider Electric, obviously with the software, with EcoStruxure Automation Expert, but they know if it comes to a point where they need to change the hardware, they will be able to select the vendor of Schneider or different. So that is also a key element where a lot of our customers found at one point they need to hit that brick wall that we call the rip and replace brick wall. But now you have no choice. There's no more product available for the solution you had, and you need to replace everything, not only the hardware, but also the application. And in this case, now we let the application run as we separate the brain from the body, as we were explaining. That's a key feature that our customers are typically raising for us. The other thing that we see here, from inside from younger engineers, how natural and intuitive this new platform is compared to traditional approach to automation, because we've changed a little bit the way how we program things and how we bring more IT technology to this environment, and makes it so much easier now to bring new blood to this automation industry, which we know we're in dire need, and our customers also facing that challenge of workforce.
Daniel, can you give us any insight about how your technicians and others within your company accepted the new systems?
Sure. So, like I mentioned, the City of Conroe has had automation equipment in the past that was provided by a single provider. We were kind of locked out of it, but this software, this equipment, along with the project, for the scope of the project, we were provided with hands-on training, not only out in the field at our water plants, but also at Schneider's facility, at Schneider's office. We went to 2 days of training where they took us into the programming, took us into the logic of the software and the equipment, and showed us how to troubleshoot a programming issue with, say, a booster pump motor or a well pump. For lack of a better example, we can now go in and do our own troubleshooting, and we're getting more and more comfortable with it. At this point, we're still a little dangerous. We don't like to get too deep into it, but so a lot of even our older staff is open to it. It makes everybody's life easier. But I will say a lot of our younger staff, this technology is kind of familiar to them, and it's very user friendly. So even our older to our younger staff has been very open to it. The more we learn how to use it, really, the easier it makes our job.
Excellent. Great to hear that. Andre, I'd like to get back to you and see if we can have a couple other examples of different industries that have adopted this approach to automation.
Certainly. There's two that comes to mind. The first one in energy and chemical, with Shell. In the context of evolving workforce and the need to accelerate digital transformation, Shell has begun to transform their automation in their facility by deploying EcoStruxure Automation Expert. At the beginning, it's really transforming their legacy control system to an open hardware-independent automation architecture, which is a key component in the Shell selection, is had this hardware independence. And they started small with non-critical application, but they tested the whole thing to make sure EcoStruxure Automation Expert will meet the need of the future. And they really took their time. And one of the things they find out, the great benefit, although the engineering was a little bit simpler, it was mostly in the maintenance and the troubleshooting of any challenge that they were facing. They could find the exact reason quite rapidly compared in the past where they needed to go and travel in a lot of different places. This event-driven solution allows them to find the solution quite rapidly. So it reduced the engineering costs. And I repeat, same thing for maintenance. And also another benefit that we topped on the side is leveraging the capability of simulation. So basically, as we said, by decoupling the hardware and the software, they can develop their full strategy, test it with the built-in simulator, and making sure it's perfect before they start deploying and buying hardware and making sure they're ready to deploy it to work. So it's a little bit different approach. It changes a little bit the project execution. Shell's adoption of open software-defined automation does reflect a strategic shift towards more scalable, portable, and interoperable solution for the future. Another example, totally different type of business, is DHP Technology. They're a leader in modular solar roof system, and they struggle typically to deploy their solution at a greater periods because they needed to reconfigure and do everything every time. Now with EcoStruxure Automation Expert, we provide them a lot more flexibility and a lot easier and faster commissioning. And it's just easier for them now to scale their solar panel depending on the application where they're modular, so you can add. But doing this in the past was a total reconfiguration of that brain, if you want. Now, as we're separated, they can do it and they embed it as they want. They can scale it. That Jan was mentioning, it's easy to, if you add repeatable application, just to copy and paste. It's as simple as that. So that's what really DHP has done. And basically, they've seen 50% faster conversion on the commissioning and the engineering side of things. So that's really a key element that brings also a great competitive edge to DHP.
I'd like to make a comment to that, to what Andre just said too. Since we do now have the basic design platform as built for this equipment and the installation process, we have 4 more plants under construction and design here at the city of Conroe currently.
Wow.
And many more over the next 5 years. The design factor is done. We're going to copy paste this to all of those new water plants. And for field staff to have the exact same equipment at every water plant is truly extremely beneficial. If one piece of the equipment goes out at water plant 7, it's the same piece of equipment that's at water plant 15. We can keep the exact same spare parts on the shelf. That type of familiarization will make everyone's job smoother and easier.
Excellent. That's a great benefit. I hadn't thought of that, but that makes a huge difference. I definitely see how your work life, Daniel, is being streamlined. It's almost like having extra people on staff with automation the way it is today.
Yeah, it really frees up existing staff's time, as I mentioned before, to do maintenance critical items at the plants.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, we're just about at the end of our time. So are there any thoughts that either of you'd like to add before we get to questions from our audience?
Certainly, I may add a few things. We talked a lot about our solution, EcoStruxure Automation Expert, and how it brings you towards the future and how that helps you to keep your total cost of ownership a lot lower by owning this IP over time and being portable. But also all of this is great technology. And yes, in the case of City of Conroe, we were with City of Conroe to really sure we made the best decision. But really, there's a change, right? And I'm sure Danielle's seen this. We need to understand that's a change management. It's a new solution. It's not the same way we used to think about automation, because the coupling that came from the body is really unique. So there's an aspect of change that need to be accounted for when you start planning your project. And definitely we're here to help you any change management in your team to make sure that you achieve the best with the solution. But that's something to keep in mind in your planning. There's a change aspect that should not be neglected.
Yeah, and I'll say we recognize that it was a significant change, and anyone looking to make a change, I'll say again, you're not alone in that decision-making process. Involve your engineering staff. Even reach out to someone that maybe already has this equipment, like ourselves. We've had several guests come in that were interested. They heard about it. We have City of Victoria coming in next Monday to take a look at it.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you for hosting them. That's nice. Yes.
Yeah, we get lots of requests for tours of water plants, a lot of times from schools and things like that. So this is something we were used to, and we're happy to share with anyone that's interested.
Well, that's great. Well, we're glad you're sharing with us today. This concludes our presentation.